The following video contains major spoilers for Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VII Remake, aka Final Fantasy VII. I'm about to say something that I believe no other person on the internet is trying to discuss, and something that only the developers of Remake know, but I figured it out. Final Fantasy VII Remake remakes the entire original game, not just Midgar. It wasn't called Remake Part 1, it's called Final Fantasy VII Remake. What, you don't believe me? Well, listen to this description and how it applies perfectly to Remake and the original despite how specific it reads. The prologue focuses on the conflicts between Avalanche and Shinra, and the prologue itself ends with a twist that involves President Shinra directly. After the prologue is over, we are introduced to the story's true main antagonist in a flashback to Nibelheim. Beyond that, we'll do a lot of different things, like provide distraction outside a large fort to protect what's inside. We'll interact with large, extreme temperature cones hanging from the ceiling in order to open the path forward. We will perform a timed face button minigame in order to impress a man of power. We will watch a character get murdered by Sephiroth just before a Jenova boss fight. We'll visit somebody seriously afflicted with Mako poisoning. The evil corporation's president gets killed in his office just before the endgame. We'll see a giant protective dome barrier covering a critical location. They're both removed in a shining, peeling away disintegration. We chase a fat, annoying white thing around, trying to retrieve a key that it had stolen from us. No! And it all comes down to confronting Sephiroth with Omnislash, as Midgar is shredded apart by tornadoes. Look at that. Big, long, specifically detailed description somehow fits with original and remake, despite the fact that Remake never leaves Midgar. Well, how's that possible? It's possible when you take the details of these broad moments and make them the opposite of what they originally were.
We always knew this was gonna get messy.
I'll point them out. The presidential prologue twist either has the president dying because of the twist, or he's the mastermind controlling it all. The facing Sephiroth against the fire scene is literally reversed in its choreography. The distraction outside the fort, before the fort was an ally, now that's our enemy. Hanging cones used to be cold and the tip pointed down, now they're hot and the tip points up. Original Power Man we performed for didn't know our identity, this one does. Murder victims stayed dead, now they get brought back. Cloud got Mako poisoned, now he visits someone else who is. A President Shinra dying at the end in his office is either the son or the father. Old barrier was made to keep outside things from getting in, and it got destroyed from the exterior. The new barrier was meant to keep things inside from getting out, and it got destroyed from within. The keystone is a real key that unlocks a place. This bag was touted to be a key, but turned out to be a locket. And Omnislash, while formerly fully successful, is now entirely blocked or dodged. That's the disguise. That's how they stay hidden from being instantly recognized. Instead of looking at the remake like it's a stretched out version of just the old Midgar section, just think of it as a complete parallel drop-down. This perspective will perfectly explain why Sephiroth shows up so much in this game, even though you think he shouldn't because you never saw him in original Midgar. He's showing up just as he did in the original game. In the prologues of both, Midgar and Chapter 1, there's a trace element of him, the sword and the black feather, but you don't see him personally. Then after that immediately, in the calm flashback or in Chapter 2, you'll have the first sighting. Then after that, in both games, he pops into the story on occasion, the second to last time being to kill a party member, and the final time you see him is the big climactic ending. While the bookends of both games are pretty much direct parallels, all the stuff in the middle seems to have been completely shuffled and jumbled around. What's the point? To get rid of the responsibility of having to stay faithful. If you do it all for the first game, then you don't have to worry about it during your new, unknown creative journey. Remake's dual purpose is 1, be the springboard and setup for a new story, because that's what they actually want to create. But 2, they have to secretly remake all of the original, so that when things start really going off the rails in Rebirth and we say, hey, what happened to remaking the original? Square can respond with, we already did that whole thing. And if you think they can't do that, jumble up an old product and pass it off as something new when it really isn't, well, just ask Tifa, she basically does the same thing in a perfect visual metaphor. So she grabs this yellow beverage, puts it alone in a mixer, and then shakes the mixer up a bunch. Don't know what that's gonna do, but regardless, the yellow comes back out like it should. Cloud has it and enjoys it. But the weird part is when he asks for something new, she doesn't add anything to the mixer, just shakes around what's already inside, and it comes out different. What the fuck? Square has effectively done the same thing with all 3 original discs of game content. They shook it all up, rearranged it, flipped things upside down, and repurposed it to make this. I'm here to show how it was done, and we're gonna analyze the first 9 chapters in this video, so buckle up, cause here we go. Chapter 1, The Destruction of All Your Hopes for a Faithful One-to-One Remake. And the chaos all starts the moment you've hit New Game, picked your camera settings, and your difficulty. Because the very first cutscene of Remake is actually an inverted version of the very last cutscene of the original. Let's take a look at the original. We start high up in the clouds. The camera pans down to reveal the rocky wastes below, and we begin to follow along some wildlife. Turns out it's Red 13 and his offspring, reinforced by his Cosmo Canyon theme song drums playing in the background. This is literally protagonist Red 13. At the end of the canyon, Red 13 and his offspring jump up, up, up the cliff face, camera following them up, up, up. He delivers a beastly roar at the top. We hear birds, distant chirps, and close-up calls from the flock of gulls right in front. And we get a clear, revealing shot of the current state of Midgar. And it's completely overrun by nature, teeming with vibrant green plant life and blue water. The tone of this entire scene is focused on nature triumphing over industry and humanity. Now let's look at the remake. We start the same, up in the clouds. But instead of panning down to reveal the rocky wastes below, the camera will pan up. Then we begin to follow our wildlife, not way down low at the bottom of a ravine, but way up high in the sky. There are not multiple animals, there is one lone bird. It is not a literal representation of a protagonist, it is a metaphorical representation of the antagonist Sephiroth, reinforced by his background theme song, One Winged Angel. And parallel to following Red 13 up the cliff face to a reveal shot of an overrun by nature Midgar, we'll follow this bird up and up and up the outskirts of the city to the reveal shot of this area of nature being overrun by an industrial metropolis. There's almost no wildlife to be seen here. Tiny flock of birds way in the back right there for only a second and a half, and a dog that we'll see eating out of a garbage can. Quite the opposite of how vibrant the wildlife in the original scene was displayed. Here it's all about the thriving humanity. The roars of beasts are not here, there's the roars of engines and construction. And the only plant life we'll see is this dried up, dying brown flower and a patch of dead grass being shredded apart by the winds of passing traffic. The tone of this scene is nature is losing. And that is how you take a chunk of the original, invert it, and present it as something quote-unquote new in the remake right in front of our eyes, hidden in plain sight. From there, we can transition into the cutscene that we thought was going to start the game out, as it originally did. Starry, sparkly, dark background transition to Aerith kneeling at the Mako pipe. But there's more inversions soon to come. Originally, Aerith was shown to look to her left, and then calmly walk down the alley towards the street. Now in the remake, she is shown to look to her right, and then fearfully run towards the street. And boom! Aerith gets hit by a moment that used to take place after the bombing of the first reactor. Now, in Remake, it takes place before. Originally, the Midgar citizen that hit Aerith ran into her panicked. Now in the Remake, he walks into her calmly with the energy of a day-to-day grind. Originally, Aerith was sent to the ground unwillingly by the force of the blow. In Remake, she chooses to go down to the ground to pick up the flowers. Are your FF7 hearts feeling stepped on yet? If not, they're going to as the evidence mounts. And we look together at what FF7 Remake is all about. Alright, let's go. In the original, we got to see two guards getting taken out. One by Jesse, one by Biggs, each individually. In the remake, the only guard we see taken out is done by Biggs and Jesse as a team. What about how Avalanche treats Cloud while moving towards the reactor, before they start to peel off one by one? In the original, there's this short but brief screen where you can see all three Avalanche members, Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse, stopping to wait while they provide cover as the whole party moves towards the reactor. You know, like a team? In the remake, the whole group takes every possible opportunity to ditch Cloud and usually taunt him while doing it.
Have fun.
You know, like assholes. They do it at the gate. They do it going up the stairs.
You got this.
Yeah, what'd he say?
They do it even going up the elevator that they just couldn't wait for Cloud before using.
Hey, Cloud! Elevator's over there! Catch up soon!
Even when it would be more tactical to let Cloud through the hole in the fence so they could bottleneck the enemies chasing them, we still get the from Biggs.
Not so fast. We've got company.
What a dick. They'll even close these giant double doors right in your face when it would have been so easy to let you slip on through. God. Then we get to this part where Jesse asks about Tifa and Cloud's closeness back in the day, and this happens. Oh look, it's Nibelheim in the day. Cross that off the reference list. We're also going to see Kid Tifa, so cross off Cloud's past as well. But then she spills the inversion beans.
Cloud! Are you ignoring me?
What? Are you ignoring me with frustrated humph? Not so fast, Square. Any player who knows the original will remember that it was Cloud who got ignored as a child by Tifa and her friends, not the other way around. Cloud was ignored. Cloud wanted to be noticed. Tifa and her friends never let him in the group, and that's why he resented them. But in the remake, inverted ragdim theory strikes again. The whole game's like this. We have no choice but to just plow ahead. It's almost time for another reference, but it's going to be a big call forward to something that used to happen after Midgar in the original. See if you recognize it. The party is unknowingly tracked by an enemy. Barrett is aware of this. Despite that, he threatens Cloud, points his gun at him, and fires into the enemy that was previously hidden from view, and the corpse falls into frame. This all happened in Corel Prison when Barrett killed the Couch Man. We got tracked by an enemy. Barrett was aware of this enemy. He pointed his gun at Cloud and the party. He fired and ended up killing the enemy that was out of view, and there's the corpse falling into frame. Same scene, but let's invert the details. Instead of a human, it'll be a robot. Instead of being behind a bunch of cover, it'll just be sitting right out there in the open. And instead of being an actually serious moment of tension, Remake plays it up for laughs.
Yeah.
Then we reach the laser security screens. This is from the original, but it used to take place before the second infiltration, not the first one. There used to be only one screen, now there are multiple. The lasers used to be constantly on, now they're intermittent. Because they used to be on all the time, the party was forced to detour around them. Now, we can plow straight through with adequate timing. Then we're off to fight the guard Scorpion Sentinel, and there's an inversion here regarding the tail laser. Originally, it was entirely and easily possible to never see the tail laser fire. The tail came up, Cloud warned Barret, and all the player has to do is sit there and take no action, specifically attacking, but you could fall asleep, and they'll go back to normal. Inaction will save you. Setup's the same, tail goes up, Cloud warns Barret, but here it's impossible to prevent the laser from ever firing, unlike the original. And inaction here will get your ass lased. After the fight, the bomb timer that used to be a forced 10 minutes is now either 20 or 30 because we have player choice.
Your call, Merc.
After the fight, we get the Jessie predicament moment, but there's a couple twists here. Originally, we didn't see what happened to her when it took place. Now we watch the event go down. Before, her problem was beneath her, a hole in the floor that her foot got stuck in, and now it's a ceiling slab falling from above. As I said in the introduction, Chapter 1 is the prologue to Remake, and Midgar is the prologue to the original FF7. Now, even though original FF7's Midgar section prologue was much longer compared to the simple Destroy One Reactor prologue of the remake, they still bear similar milestone moments in terms of the damage dealt between both good and bad. They even both end in the same fashion, but these milestones and the ending wouldn't be complete without the inverting factor. So, original has multiple reactor destructions, the remake has just one. The original had plate fall, where a massive slab fell down from above and landed on thousands of people. The remake has reactor number 1 exploding and falling apart, where a slab big enough just for one falls and lands on Jessie. Both end with the player thinking they're headed towards dealing a massive blow to Shinra, but it turns out someone else is responsible, not you. Both twists directly involve President Shinra. As Avalanche, you thought you were going to go up there and confront him yourselves, but it turns out Sephiroth has already murdered him. In Remake, you think you're going to be responsible for blowing the reactor, but it turns out President Shinra himself gives the order to self-destruct it, which is another major inversion. Originally, the President was on the receiving end of the prologue's plot twist. He was the victim and died. Remake's prologue plot twist ending depicts the Shinra President in quite the opposite fashion, as the puppet master, the one with the power to call the shots from behind the curtain. Now, I'm guessing one of the weakest sounding parts of this whole argument was the whole Jessie's slab falling on her is like a mini version of Platefall. You know, lots of people, one person. But I'll ask you, why did her predicament have to specifically be something like a slab falling on her from above? Why couldn't her foot just have been stuck and gone through one of these panels that maybe popped out of the floor and now she needs help? Or maybe she was using that gun that she has to help us out with a scorpion battle from this perfect vantage point, but then all the ruckus made her fall over the side and now she's hanging and needs to get pulled up. Or how about one of those sweepers that's waiting in the wings in this room for the President's command can be activated and then pins her down with a bunch of gunfire until we can help out? There are plenty of things that you could do to keep Jessie occupied, but they settled on this. Deliberately. It takes time, energy, and effort to do all the extra animating and effects. It's for a reason, and I think it's because they're doing everything I'm saying they're doing. And if they're not doing this inversion thing I think they're doing, then tell me this. Why did they add this extra elevator on the reactor approach when it wasn't there before? We've already had 4 moments of Avalanche leaving Cloud behind to deal with, folks. Do we really need a 5th one to reinforce this? Well, yes, if you're trying to make a callback to this elevator that also led to a reactor, because they're both small, square, they got the caution tape, and they even poof out dust at the end of their ride. And the caution stripes on the remake elevator make less sense because there's giant walls keeping you from falling. The old one was just a flat platform. But that's what they're doing. Shove everything from everywhere into this remake wherever you can, even if it only makes the player think of old stuff for just a moment. And with that, time for the next chapter. Chapter 2, Fateful Flashbacks. This chapter is a parallel of all the story beats that took place in Cloud's calm flashback story to Nibelheim. Just watch and see. First we got rumbling, followed by a big boom. We've got Cloud showing a level of excitement about his new materia. We follow Guiding Girl, and then the structure beneath us collapses, and oh no, someone separated from the rest of the group. Then there's the prominent fountain. When you get there, the game halts you for a scene or situation that you can't just run past or instantly skip. You can rush through it, but you still have to experience the whole thing before moving forward. Both of these journeys have you making your way through tight, twisting terrain, as well as scaling up a large something top, and there's even a moment at the highest point where the camera on its own specifically moves to focus on a distant reactor in the background. And of course, it couldn't be a parallel to the calm flashback without the famous Sephiroth against the fiery wall background FMV. Now we'll go back and see how they disguised these moments by applying the ragdim theory and inverting the details. We used to have one constant rumble before the boom, now there are periodic ones.
And with nothing but a few scratches to show.
But the plan is what matters, right?
Then both old and new rumblings are followed by the boom. Originally, a truck and a monster came together, there was a boom, and immediately afterward, both truck and monster are still intact. In this flipped remake version, the bomb and the wall meet up, there's a big boom, and they are both immediately destroyed as a result. Cloud discussed some new materia he just got, and he was clearly excited to use it. And Sephiroth kind of belittled him a little bit, and Cloud shrugged it off like, yeah, come on, whatever. Now in Remake, we actually see Cloud acquiring some new materia.
You can have it for saving my life.
And he could not care less about it.
Just doing my job, nothing more.
He even tries to turn away without accepting, and Jessie has to force it into his hand. Cloud kind of belittles and lectures her about what survival's all about.
Survival can be a matter of luck or skill. You can't rely on luck.
And after an unenthusiastic thank you,
Yeah, well, thanks.
she offers to help, he talks some crap.
You do know how to use it, right?
You do know what I was, right?
Jessie's gotta shrug it off like, yeah, whatever.
Okay, I was only trying to help.
Next we've got the bridge collapse that separates one person from the rest. Pay close attention because the lead-ups to this collapse are way more identical than you think. So you're following your guiding character, Tifa. When you get close to interact with her, you get frozen and she gets to have a head start and break away. Now we're following a guiding character, Jessie, and even though we never get to interact with her to cause her to break ahead and get a head start on us, the game forces it anyway by whipping the camera sideways, forcing you to walk. Then she's long gone. As you try to approach again, your movement pauses and you can hear the sound of the terrain beneath you breaking apart. Same thing in Remake. Right before the actual scene of the collapsing rubble underneath you starts, there is a brief pause where you're stopped and it starts to, uh-oh, the bridge, and it breaks. And in the original, as a result of the bridge collapse, one of the Shinra troops was separated from everyone else and could not take the same path they did. And in Remake, you discover that you're the one to be separated after this incident. And if anyone out there's thinking, but Ross, that was a pile of rubble, it has to be a bridge for it to be a parallel. Well, don't worry, run ahead for 5 seconds and there's a bridge right there. Thanks, Square. And there's our inversion. Before, we got to be on top of a bridge when it broke, and now we get to be underneath it when it breaks. Thanks, new content. How about them prominent fountains? In the original game, we got stopped at a fountain for a field dialogue sequence between a bunch of allies. In the remake, enemies exchange damage in combat. Even the fountain itself has been inverted. It used to be a materia fountain. Materia is solid. Now it's a water fountain. Water is, you get it. Oh, and here's a fun fact. Even though both fountains look totally different at the start, look what happens to the remake one partway through that battle. No longer a round, symmetrical, pristine-shaped fountain, it is now jagged, asymmetrical, and uniquely shaped, far more resembling the old materia fountain from before. Both the tight twisting caves and the large mountaintop are all natural formations. All the twisting alleyways of brick and concrete and the rooftops are all man-made industrial things. The forced camera shot of a distant background reactor, the old was intact and the new is destroyed. Before, Sephiroth started this scene with the 45-degree angle facing us pose and then turned his back on us and faced the wall of fire. With Remake, just reverse it. Have him start facing away towards the fire, then have him turn around and face us at that angled pose. Also think about this, the starting points and destinations of both journeys are inverted. Originally, we start on transportation with the goal of reaching a reactor. Now we're starting at the destroyed reactor with the goal of getting on some transportation. Here's something else to think about. These guys are monster hunters currently. They're investigating the reactor because it's malfunctioning and it has produced brutal creatures. Their truck's about to come to a halt and they're gonna get out and fight the monster that they're there to hunt. Out of all the original flashbacks framework, this was happening at the beginning. And here we are, at the inverted end of the calm flashback, and we get that same sequence. A truck carrying troops comes to a screeching halt, deploys them to quell and kill a monster. You. The same monster that caused the reactor to start malfunctioning. A monster that was produced by the reactor. Without the existence of these lifeblood of the planet-sucking machines, the eco-terrorist group Avalanche would not exist. Shinra was on a monster hunt before, now they're on a manhunt, which is why they named this guy the Huntsman. Except in Inversion World, the monster wins this battle. Time for a bonus final inversion of a moment. See if you can realize what's actually happening here. Cloud's totally surrounded, and then this happens.
Wait! I know that.
Okay, what did you just see? Because I just saw a horrified individual with their arm outstretched in this, "Oh no, why'd you do that?" kind of mood, because they just saw a second character, who this character is familiar with, apparently having lost their mind, and they cut down a third character that this first character mentioned shares a close bond with. In other words, and graphics, we just saw a weird inverted version of horrified Cloud with his arm outstretched in a "oh my god, why'd you do that" kind of sense, because he just saw Sephiroth, the guy who he's familiar with, seemingly lose his mind and cut down a third person that Cloud shares a close bond with. It's the same shit! In both cases, you've got someone watching horrified as a top-notch soldier does something insane. Except this time, you're the slasher villain. This is why I find Cloud's little mental freakout to be so weird right before he kills the guy, because it's like he's acting all normal and is probably about to just jump off onto the train, but then some fourth wall Inversion Theory Square Enix voice gets in his head and is all like,
"Cloud, you are a puppet. Do the puppet master's bidding and perform an inverted moment from the original even though it shouldn't be happening here."
and then he comes out of it and he's like, "What the hell was that? I don't know, but I just can't help myself!" That's absolutely what's happening. Cloud has no reason to kill that guy to escape. He can jump 40 feet in the air. He's doing it to reenact this old moment. While Chapter 2 is mostly a calm flashback in disguise, even the things that we did do in the original that we do here still have their details flipped around. Like Aerith and the flower. Originally you could refuse it, in Remake you can't. In original, you had to pay for it if you wanted it, and in Remake, it's always free. When it comes to the train door closing, it's whoever genuinely cares the most about Cloud at that point, depending on which game you're playing. Just compare the interactions of the characters in the car to Cloud's immediate entrance, whether it's original or Remake. Originally, Barrett is the only one to not address Cloud when he arrives, and out of everyone who does, Jesse's is the only one that ends in ellipses, not exclamations. When Cloud shows up in Remake, Barrett's the first and only person to say something.
You had me worried for a minute.
And then everyone just looks at him like, "Hey, that's our line." The old security scan used to bathe the entire car in red light all at once. In the Remake, now it scans each car from end to end in a more sequential style. And the shot of Cloud riding the train to safety almost just looks like a mirrored version of the original. Cloud even faces the opposite direction while he rides on top. He used to stay facing forward after he landed, but now he turns around to face the troops he's escaped. And that does it for Chapter 2. Chapter 3, Home Sweet World. So far with Chapters 1 and 2, we've seen heavy inverted references to things in Midgar, but also a lot of post-Midgar content, like the flashback told in Calm, the Corel prison Barrett gun scare moment, Cloud's childhood past, Let's see what else Chapter 3 brings us. First, let's invert this flower. We used to have the option of giving it to Tifa or Marlene. Now it's always Tifa every time. Then we're given our very own place to stay.
There's an empty apartment in a place just down the road. It's nothing fancy, but...
And it's free.
The landlady's a big friend of the cause, so you wouldn't even have to pay rent. Sound good?
Reminds me of purchasing Villa Cloud in the original game's Costa del Sol for a whopping 300,000 gil. And then believe it or not, this little middle of the night sequence with Marco is mirroring the finding Aerith in the Forgotten Capital and almost murdering her yourself moment. Both scenes involve Cloud hearing a voice, going to check it out, and then finding someone defenseless and innocent, but Cloud almost kills them himself if it wasn't for friends yelling, "Cloud, stop!" The old Innocent was the most precious protagonist, and the new Innocent is someone who Cloud is hallucinating is the worst antagonist of the original. However, once we've had a good night's sleep, it is time to do a parallel of the whole world map reveal and a taste of the things that are nearby and beyond. Both games, this is your first taste of being bathed completely in fresh outdoor sunlight. In both games, this is the first appearance of the world map theme. The first time you experience both these moments, you're in complete awe. Originally, it was because the game really led up to the possibility that Midgar was the world. They talk about 8 sectors on a lower and upper plate. They used to be towns with real names. For all we knew, those could have been the 16 towns of the entire game that we were going to visit. Even the intro cutscene doesn't show you any world beyond the borders of Midgar. It's a black void. You come out of this experience thinking, this game is much bigger than I thought, and there's a lot more to it than I thought. In Remake, we're again filled with awe, looking and marveling at how big the scope of this thing truly is. We're actually given separate quests we can do in this chapter. This chapter also unlocks the weapon upgrade system. That's a whole nother layer of game mechanics. And a reference to what it visually looks like to be inside Bugenhagen's observatory with large chunks of materia floating around a center of gravity. The old version of this was big enough for you to actually go inside and walk around in. This one is like a tiny microcosm world that's inside your weapons. And just what is to come in the original soon thereafter? Well, we've got Calm, but we already discussed that. We've got the Chocobo farm where we're going to have to lure one out and catch it, hopefully without it running away, so we can get access to the Mithril Cave. Beyond that, there's even that sleeping man that talks about battle statistics. And guess what? We're paralleling every one in Remake. Here we go. Bathed in sunlight both times, yet they pulled it off being inside and outside the city limits of Midgar. But there's a problem here. We've always known the lower plate of Midgar to be a place that has no day or night because it's constantly dark. Not the case anymore. In Remake, sunlight clearly has no issue reaching the lower plate in all directions. Problem is, the sun should have a hard time getting to the lower plate. Not just because 1997 said that, but because 2020 went out of its way to come up with new sun lamp technology, specifically designed to simulate the sun, because it can't get to the bottom. These lamps should only be invented if it actually was dark all the time below, but it's not because they're using this awe-inspiring moment as the reveal of the world map parallel. Have your cake and eat it too. We got sun lamps to shine light down below because it's always dark, except when it has to not be dark because we're trying to reference a feeling you had when you played the original game. And you can't even trust Square's reasoning for the sun lamp's existence in the first place. Look!
Sun lamps. You think these are the plate suns? The closest thing we have to the real thing.
Bullshit! You got plenty of the real thing down there. And if they're trying to simulate the real thing when the real thing should be happening, why are they all turned off in the daytime? And in even dumber fashion, turning them on at night.
But if we go through with it, the grounders in Sector 4 will suffer.
Doubt it, Tifa. I'm sure they'd much rather get the sleep that they've been missing because now these Remake citizens are damned to live in a set of slums that can't escape brightness. So we've done the world map reveal. We're skipping Calm because we already did the flashback stuff there. What's next? The Chocobo farm. But we're going to change things up and flip it around. Instead of luring out a Chocobo by wearing materia passively, we're going to lure out a Doom Rat by actively killing other rats. Both Original and Remake have us tracking down an animal, but Original's purpose was to capture it safely and ride it around. Remake's purpose is to try and kill the thing you're tracking down. Both situations contain a little scene where the thing you're chasing ends up fleeing. The originals was optional to see, and you only saw it if you screwed things up. In Remake's take on this moment, the pursued monster fleeing scene will always take place, and it's taking place because you're doing things right. Doesn't matter how strong or good you are, you cannot avoid watching this scene of the monster fleeing in Remake. Trust me. Originally, there's a small cave nearby all this stuff we're doing, and so is there in Remake, even though in all of original Midgar I can ever remember, there is not one single naturally formed cave anywhere. I think it's here to be a small representation of the Mithril Cave that was nearby the whole monster luring antics from the original. Now we have to have a cave nearby these monster luring and pursuing antics. And what's even stranger is the developers can put whatever they want in this cave. They could put crates, they could put chests, they could put nothing. But they chose to put just one single piece of materia. A single piece of materia inside a tiny cave. You know what that makes me think of from the original? All the tiny caves with single pieces of materia in them. Those special ones you could only reach with special chocobos in most cases. I'll be crossing those off my reference map list, and the Mithril Mine, and the Chocobo Farm. And if you don't think those were enough references for the Chocobo Farm, then why would they reinforce them here in the slums by putting that song, that specific hip-hop the Chocobo song, right nearby? It's because Square likes to use these little pick-upable CDs from old songs to reinforce the inverted post-Midgar references that they're doing around the area where the song is played. The sleeping battle stats man who used to say how many fights you've had and how many times you've escaped is now paralleled by the monsters slain in Scrap Boulevard tally.
The tally of monsters slain has been updated. Got new numbers for monsters slain this month. Check them out.
And just listen to that energy behind the announcements. Quite the opposite of how they were announced before, through sleeping, mumbling lips. In both cases, the stats are all personally yours, no one else's. The man tells you that you have escaped or you've had battles, and Katie even admits...
Just between you and me, though, they're pretty much all your kills. Cool, huh?
That is cool, and it's cool how you give me stuff for these numbers, too. So did the old man. On another note, do you remember the cute little white chocobo in Medial who warmed up to you if you looked like you were going to give it some treat? And if you reach your hand out towards the white animal in the right way, it'll respond positively. Well, I remember the same exact opposite thing happening with Betty's little white cats.
Really?
Yes, now remind us how your cats are like the white chocobo and they'll warm up to people who look like they're going to give them stuff, like treats.
They like places where there's food. And nice people will give them treats when they ask.
That's neat, but let's invert it a little bit. Before, you used to be able to get a positive reaction from the tiny white animal if you played your cards right. Now, every single one runs away from you in disgust when you reach out towards it.
This sucks.
It even looks like they took this screen from Gungaga Village and used it as the visual basis for the entrance to Scrap Boulevard. Big central ruined pillar in the center with paths to the left and the right. The pinball machine is now a callback to the Lucky Sevens mechanic from the original. Back then, if a character got 4 sevens worth of HP as their current value, you hit lucky sevens like a slot machine jackpot. And likewise, the pinball machine hits all sevens and then plays sounds of a slot machine payout, including the tumbling coins. Which then brings us to how the original let us go in the hideout. We even got to spend the night there, but Remake flips all that on its head and bars not only Cloud, but the player as well from ever seeing the inside. Chapter 4, Mad Dash. Through a bunch of references. Let's pick up the pace. In this chapter, we're going to fly through some references to old vehicles, Medial, and even Fort Condor. Are you ready?
Then let's lay down some rubber.
Crank that throttle. Okay, you got it.
Alright, the bike. While this section's main purpose is to prepare you adequately for what's coming up in Chapter 18, it's also serving as a parallel to things like snowboarding and the submarine. Both this area with the bike and the snowboarding section have similar terrain, whether it's driving through caves that are totally enclosed or U-shaped canyons with crossing overpasses. There's even something that new bikes do that old bikes didn't, that old snowboards did. Sweet jumps! Use the ramps, and it even shows that Cloud can jump the bike just by himself, same way you could jump with a snowboard with no ramp. Both the old snowboarding and this new bike section have moments where the path forks into two paths left and right, but the inversion here is that the original forks actually made you go to different destinations at the end of the sequence. The forks in Remake always quickly converge back into the same route, ultimately leaving your final destination unchanged. Let's talk obstacles. In snowboarding of FF7, obstacles either knock you flat on your ass or they kinda make you weeble wobble. They hamper your speed and your direction when you hit them. In Remake, smash through anything you want, cause it all bounces off you like a super ball. Your speed and direction unchanged. Once Roche appears, we've now transitioned from snowboarding into the submarine duel. Enemy red sub, enemy red bike. It's not a joke, his bike visually is based off of the red submarine. Look at the round, riveted steel of it, like it could withstand extreme pressure from all directions. It looks thick, it looks durable, like a sub would be for deep water. Look at the headlights and the torpedo launchers, two round ones stacked on top of each other on both sides of the body. His exhaust pipes are even angled upward and back like the tail fins on the sub. They could have been pointed straight and horizontal, but they're not, for some deliberate reason. Two vehicular duels, both taking place in a twisting canyon-like setting, one deep under the sea, naturally formed, and one up on dry land, built by humans. The other visual that ties these two sequences together nicely is Roche's lightning attack. Look at how this big vertical column of danger suddenly flashes in front of you and you gotta quickly veer to the side. The same concept applies to the mines underwater. Your sonar ping suddenly flashes the mines in front of you, and you may be in need of a quick dodge. Now, remember the original FF7 when Elmira, a mother, asked you to exfiltrate her house without her daughter finding out? I do. That's why I find it interesting when we get to the upper plate here in Chapter 4, where Jessie, a daughter, asks you to infiltrate her house without her mother finding out.
Well, I need you to rob my house. Think you can do that for me? We'll be chatting Mom up in the kitchen. There's no way she'll ever hear you.
Oh, so you've completely removed the risk of getting caught, unlike the original scene. Got it. So what are we here to do, anyway? Oh yeah, we're recreating the whole Mako poison victim getting visitors thing. Let's talk about the parallels and the inverts. Originally, Cloud was the Mako poisoning patient. Now, he's the one visiting. Original victim could still move and speak. Remake's victim is completely catatonic. Cloud's special visitor in the original was someone extremely close to him, and her reasons for visiting were selfless. She wanted to do anything to help Cloud get better, even if it was just devoting her time, energy, and presence to be next to him. Dad's special visitor doesn't know him whatsoever and is only there for the selfish act of stealing some of his personal belongings to gain unauthorized access to his workplace and further implicate the guy's daughter in terrorist activity.
And down she goes!
Thanks.
How thoughtful of us. Next up is the warehouse, aka Fort Condor. Though this location in the remake is a warehouse, not an actual fort, it still has a lot of aspects that might as well make it a fort. There's a sentry posted at the front gate. It's got a training center, and a full battalion of troops, bots, missile launchers up on high wall placements, and even munitions are stored in the warehouse. Something quite military related, rather than just general goods or supplies or even food. More importantly, look at how similar the framework of both the Fort Condor and the warehouse set pieces are. Party distracts and occupies the enemy force right out front of the fort in order to focus their attention off of what's inside the fort, be it the Condor and the huge materia in the original, or Jessie and the blasting agent in the remake.
While you're inside, we make sure the guards are focused on the outside, yeah?
Exactly. Just do the thing where you draw everyone's attention away.
Keep all the enemies busy until the boss arrives. After that, the mission is complete. Your reward is a fiery summon materia. Phoenix in the original, and Ifrit in the remake. No, Ross, you're wrong. She gives a magic materia for barrier after the job's over. So what? That's not his payment for doing the job. Listen to Jessie, it's a thank you.
Thanks for stepping up.
Merc, and now for the cherry on top.
The barrier materia and the kiss are just thanking him for having even accepted it in the first place. Ifrit materia is the reward, the compensation that's actually worth the work of the job itself.
A down payment.
There's the inverted detail with the Fort Condor summon reward. Originally, you got it after the fight was all over, and now we're getting it before the job begins. Back in the original, the fort was on our side. They were our allies, and we tried to defend it from the Shinra thieves going after the huge materia. In Remake, the fortress belongs to Shinra, your enemy, and you, the party, are the thieves trying to steal something from within. How about the stationary explosives launching emplacements at both forts? Fort Condors were dummy-fired. Explosives landed the same spot every time. Remakes have smart targeting that seek out enemies. And don't ever forget, Square isn't just repurposing everything from the original that was big, like an entire Fort Condor section. They even repurposed Wedge's ass humor. Yeah, right after the tunnel bomb, Wedge running around like a crazy person, screaming, slapping his own butt because he thought it was on fire. He was actually fine. And here's Wedge, running around like a crazy person. Also with the screaming. And even though Wedge never encountered any flames and his injury was clearly from sharp chomping teeth, Jesse thinks his butt might be burned or singed?
Maybe singed. This is like a bruise or a mild burn at worst.
And we'll top it off by letting somebody else give Wedge a little smacka. Because even here, his ass is fine. And hey, why don't we shake up the awesome parachuting in Midgar section from the original? Back then, we did it solo, not in pairs. The upper plate was the destination, not the starting point. We were doing it before a big mission. Now we're doing it after a big mission. Even the shot that falls fast and then suddenly slows down is inverted. Before we were above a chute looking down on it when it opened. Now we're below the chute looking up into it when it opens. And dare I say, the tones of these two moments are polarized as well. Back in the original, it was an exciting lead-up to the return to Midgar where this whole story began, and we're gonna take down Shinra for good. Run down to the exterior deck of your airship to hop over the railing into a metropolis down below. It's so awesome and triumphant with Sid's theme playing. Just watch. What's Remake's version like? Well, it's a lot more silly and a lot less focused. Everyone's got something to say.
He's a keeper, all right.
And whether they're screaming, or moping,
I wish I could have done more. Just got hurt.
You did enough.
or making dumb puns,
Feels like we're flying high these days.
or hollow boasts about how awesome you are and your insanely overestimated capabilities.
Yeah! Together, we can take on the world!
I don't believe you. I've seen us in action. I wouldn't call getting confronted by 3 sweepers at once and looking like you don't know what to do being able to take on the world. Especially when your only saving grace is the boss that you just failed to finish off has mercy on you and one-shots all his allies in a crazy adrenaline spree. Take on the world. Lastly, the Whisper's attack on the Sector 7 slums parallels Ultimate Weapon's attack on Midil. Both of these action scenes start off with you on the interior of a building, and then your first taste of what kind of chaos is going on outside is when you run out to see it yourself. Even in both situations, the attacking force, whether it's a single giant monster or thousands of small ones, both are serving a higher authority and will. Weapons serve the planet itself. These Whispers are arbiters of fate. They serve destiny. Then we've got our injured pair inversions. In the original, you saw this pairing. injured Cloud sitting down, whoa, 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 with his head, and Tifa's standing there looking after him. Then, the incident with the weapon attack takes place. Remake flips all that around. Now you'll see the attack of the town happen first, and it's followed by the visual of the two characters, one looking after the other, who's sitting there injured with their head tossing side to side like whoa, 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 despite the fact that this one's injury is a twisted ankle. There's no reason for your head to do that, Jesse. Also, might I suggest lying down instead of half standing on your injury site as your idle animation? I might suggest that if I didn't already know that you're a puppet just like everyone and everything else in this game, secretly remaking the full original game in FF7 Remake without us immediately noticing it. And I'm sorry, here's two things I forgot about Fort Condor. Originally, it's two armies fighting, and Remake parallels this at the warehouse by having the other Avalanche cells show up, full battalion of troops and all. And here's one big inverted parallel. The original Fort Condor sequence ended with the bright shining flare of the Phoenix's birth way up high. Remake's Fort Condor stand-in sequence begins with a starry, bright shining flare way up high. Ugh, it never ends. Chapter 5, Frigid Pursuit. In the original FF7, after the snowboarding scene, we got to approach the Great Glacier through all the snowy wilderness woods with the high winds, then there's the interior section with the icicles, then there's the whirlwind maze afterwards. Chapter 5 will be a parallel of the exterior approach and scaling of the Great Glacier. Chapter 6 deals with the latter two, interior and whirlwind section. So what are the main staples of the original approach and navigation of the Great Glacier's exterior? First, we crash-landed from a high-speed moving vehicle. Then the characters got their bearings by checking a map that had some notable points of interest connected by long, straight, corridor-like sections. Then we find ourselves in this 2D platformer perspective where we're moving diagonally between different landings, following markers left by others. You have a mechanic where a different set of markers is used in order to keep your camera pointed in the right direction and moving forward. Chapter 5 of Remake does all of these things, but inverts the details as it goes. Crash land from a high-speed moving vehicle. You got the personal snowboard that's designed for an individual, and the train that's public and designed for groups. Then, both games have the characters themselves checking an actual in-game map to get their bearings.
Now let's confirm our position and get back on mission.
Both maps are similar in design. There's even a little reference with a cabin picture, kind of makes you think of HotSauce's cabin. And furthermore, despite the fact that the original party actually had a portable copy of the map on them since picking it up in Icicle Inn, you can't check it in any of these long corridor connecting screens. You can only open it at the nodes, where you can change paths. Remake parallels this by only having the party get access to these large, non-portable maps at certain points. Just like the original, they're not in these long corridors of nothing, but instead they're only at the junctions, or these crossovers where you can switch from one line to another.
Alright, let's figure out where the hell we are.
Then here we are on this 2D platformer kind of perspective, moving diagonally between landings, following marker left by someone else. Originally, we followed flags left by Holtzoff and his former climbing partner. They marked every potential path you could take. Our remake stamp markers were left behind by Avalanche.
I think our colleagues put up all that stamp graffiti.
And they marked the only path you can go, and it's the right one.
Remember, we just gotta follow the nose.
Then there's the second set of markers that are all about making sure you stay pointed in the right direction. But the inversion is that the original's little posts showed you what direction you've been coming from, whereas the blue lights are all about showing you the direction you need to be going toward.
But pay attention to railway signals too.
Following the blue lights means you're going the right way. And that's how you redo the approach to Great Glacier. But there's even some things outside of Original's Midgar and Great Glacier that are referenced here. For instance, remember the GI cave touching webs and then having to fight the thing that spun the webs right after? And these web spinners were particularly stronger than the rest of the monsters in the area. Just flip that around for Remake. Have to fight the web spinner first, and then immediately afterwards get to touch the spider web that blocks your path. There's a web after every grass strike encounter. And there's 3 encounters, meaning 3 webs, and the original GI cave had 3 webs in it. How about this old scene? Security office, 1 guy in it, completely oblivious and asleep to what we're up to on screen. The camera goes from in the office, transitions through the monitor to reality, and the party enters the frame. Remake is the opposite flow. We start in reality. The party leaves the frame, then the camera transitions back through the screen of the camera watching them to an office that's filled with people who are totally aware of what we're up to.
Well done, well done.
And then we're gonna come up here.
Hey,
huh?
hold up.
What? Hey, wait, hold up. What is this doing here? Then we'll finish the chapter by fighting this boss. And to answer your question, Barrett,
What would you say that last one looked like?
I think it looks like, acts like, is introduced like, and even named after Materia Keeper. Start with the name. Materia Keeper is a crab, and Keeper and Warden are synonymous. Check them out visually. They both stand on 4 corner point legs. They even both have that pair of legs that's up in the back pointing out horizontally to each side. However, here's a little inversion. Whereas Materia Keeper's limbs are all long and come to a sharp point, everything on Crab Warden is this short, round, stubby thing. They're both introduced the same. You see them on the field after you climb down a ladder nearby, and they're just sitting there in the corner of the room, both waiting for someone to get close enough to touch it, and then the fight starts. And there's inversions, of course. Materia Keeper was totally biological. Crab Warden is a complete robot. On the field, before the battle, Materia Keeper can be seen obviously moving. Crab Warden was totally still. And lastly, each boss's most devastating attack is something based on electricity that hits a wide area. But while Materia Keeper's Trine is unavoidable and will hit everybody, Crab Warden's Surge affects a huge area as well, but it can be completely avoided. Now, I'm of the belief that everything they're doing that references all original FF7 in Remake is done so that they don't have to ever touch it again. For Rebirth and beyond, the developers want to be free of the old material and constraints of it. And if they still do things from the original, they will not be without inversions, opposites, something about them that's been flipped to make it different. Example, I just showed you that Crab Warden is Materia Keeper in all forms: visual, introduction, behavior, name. So if they did Crab Warden so they never have to redo Materia Keeper again, then why would we see Materia Keeper in this trailer for Rebirth? Ooh, looks like I'm wrong, right? Wrong! See, if you look at this scene very closely, you may notice Sephiroth and Cloud fighting alongside each other. Which means our original Materia Keeper fight as Materia Keeper has now been repurposed to take place in the past instead of the present. Inverted! Chapter 6, A Song of Ice and Fire. Check this out. The party interacts with giant extreme temperature cone shapes hanging from the ceiling. These cones can only be accessed or visited in one specific order, and your interactions with these cones cause extra fights for you to endure that normally would have not taken place had you not touched the cone. And can you believe it? That really specific spiel I just babbled out applies exactly to icicles from the original and sun lamps from the remake.
You're kidding me.
Icicles and sun lamps are both geometrically cones, except one points down and the other points up. They're both related to extreme temperatures. Icicles are darn cold, and something that simulates the sun is hot. Originally, the icicles must be approached from the right to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4. These first 3 share a likeness. All 3 of those are the ones that build the bridge to get you further along in the game. That last one is optional and only opens the way to some treasure. It stands alone, in function. Remake flips the 2 groups. Now you encounter the single one for the door.
Needs power, I think.
Emergency power supply confirmed. Disengaging locking mechanisms.
Okay, that's that.
And then you encounter the trio that makes the cargo platform be a bridge for you. 3 and then 1, or 1 and then 3.
Needs 3 lights worth, looks like.
We get a similar upward shot of both cones as they change state from either being broken off or turned off. And what about those extra battles? Original, it's obvious. You touch the icicle and instantly have to fight the icicle and some monsters. Remake does something similar. An area that you previously had no problem passing through.
They busted?
Powered down, is my guess.
Lucky us, am I right? One less thing for us to worry about.
Is now populated with a forced encounter.
Reinitializing intrusion prevention system.
Intrusion prevention?
Because you turned the lamp off.
Back online because of us.
Back then, the fight from touching the cones happened right away, and in Remake, it's delayed till later. That's enough about icicles, now for the Whirlwind Maze. Similarities, the Whirlwind Maze and the upper plate are both extremely high elevation locations. You're walking on narrow pathways. One misstep for people up here could lead to them falling to their death.
Nothing but air below us.
This is further compounded on by the fact that there are extremely strong winds in the area, blowing from right to left in particular. Yep, I think these 3 fans are meant to pay a little homage back to the 3 screens of high winds in the original Whirlwind Maze. While both scenes have you encountering high winds blowing from right to left, they're definitely different in terms of challenge, aren't they? In the original, these challenges get progressively harder through the 3 different screens of it. One is just a wind wall that you run through when it's only lightly blowing. The second screen adds these periodic slicing winds that travel across, and the third screen adds periodic lightning bolts. Try not to get hit by anything, because if you do, you're going back and you got a mandatory battle. There's definite challenge and consequences for failure here, as opposed to Remake's take on the situation. Hold up. No timing required, no way to get sent back as a penalty. What a challenge. Another aspect of the Whirlwind Maze was that the party was very concerned with getting a piece of very specific materia, the black materia. Important enough for the party themselves to actually speak and exchange words about it. They never do that with other materia that you can pick up in the field. And oddly enough, this underplate area that seems to be acting kind of like the Whirlwind Maze has moments in it where your characters are specifically verbally concerned about, we gotta get that materia.
Ha! Going for that materia, weren't you?
So close, and yet so far.
I'm sure there's another way to get there.
Nothing we can do but search.
And when we find it, we can finally snag that materia.
This is the only chapter where your characters do this. They even do it again when you're talking about the materia behind the fan.
Hey, what's that behind the fan over there?
Isn't that...
Hey, don't be a dumbass! Tifa told you not to look at the fan!
What's that behind the fan over there?
It's summoning materia found in the High Winds area. Just like in the old High Winds area, we found some summon materia. And it was kind of a badass. Maybe that's why Barrett says this.
What kind of badass will pop out of this one?
And what about this? Countdown in order to complete a maintenance procedure before a system fires up?
Switching ventilation system to maintenance mode. Please complete the maintenance access procedure within the designated time limit.
Man, what are we even doing?
Trying to finish this maintenance before the time expires and the fans turn back on is like Shara trying to finish her oxygen tank maintenance before the rockets ignite. Both scenes are centered around the action of complete the maintenance before the countdown expires or else, except the or else is the inversion. Remake, if you failed, you just tried it again, and you had unlimited attempts to do it. In the original, Sid and Shara have no such luxury. Shara's gotta get this done right and done now, or else she will lose her life. Sid has to launch this rocket here and now, or else the space program gets shut down for good. Dire irreversible consequences versus, oh, I guess I'll try again. And look, it's not just about, oh, we're doing maintenance in both scenes. Look at the systems that are being worked on. They are both directly designed to maintain breathable quality air. Shara was working on oxygen tanks that would maintain breathable air for the astronauts in the rocket. And these fans are all about ventilating smog out of the upper plate.
Those ventilation fans?
Keeping the plate's air clean by pushing the smog into the slum.
Lastly, there's that moment where they all start yapping about one of Marlene's books and a quote that comes from it. It is brought up because you hit a dead end.
Yep, one of her favorites. Loves it when I read it to her before bedtime. Doing all the voices.
Life in the Endless Maze.
But the fact that it's called the Endless Maze may not be a reference to the Whirlwind Maze, but rather the Sleeping Forest, which before it's awakened is effectively an endless maze of screens. And with that, let's disengage from Chapter 6 and move on. Chapter 7, Under the Sea. It's starting to become clearer and clearer that anytime you come across new content in the remake, it's somehow old from the original, but repurposed and inverted and disguised. All this new content in Chapter 7, like the live execution premise, the whole taking components away from Airbuster, all the extra areas of the reactor we have to run through, it's all old stuff. And most of it seems to link back to the underwater reactor. How so? Well, first, throughout the underwater reactor, you are constantly encountered by Shinra grunts and commanders, and they all notably speak dialogue before the fight with them begins. You're Cloud. You are not getting this huge materia. You're not taking over this ship. You want the sub, just try and take it. Sir, maybe we shouldn't piss them off. All the way up to the final group in the submarine, who you can actually take prisoner if you like. Remake does this exact same kind of thing every time you encounter Shinra troops, whether they're the grunts in blue,
It's ready, sir.
the commanders in red,
Component outbound from BA.
or the shock troopers.
Come quietly or there'll be trouble!
Each encounter is first precluded by a cutscene where they all get some dialogue and then the fight begins.
Intruders! Take them out!
Intruders! Seize them!
Engineering, this is C7.
Come quietly or there'll be trouble!
They're here! Hold them back! Buy us every second you can!
What is the status of my airbuster?
Even in the one time where you enter the room freely and go straight into battle, they still have one guy, good old Elite Security Officer A, who's given invincibility so he can finish his whole chit-chat on the radio before he can be killed.
We can't afford any more delays! You need to keep those components coming! Do whatever it takes!
No holding back.
Solid copy. B6 will hold the line.
It's over. Let's finish this.
However, it's the whole taking prisoners thing that's inverted and backwards here. Originally, it happens with the last set of human Shinra guards. You give the order to capture them, and it succeeds. In Remake, this capture attempt of a trio of people is done right before the first set of human Shinra guards encountered. The orders given by Heidegger of Shinra
To the imbecile in charge down there, you are hereby ordered to seize those intruders and bring them to me.
and the attempt is a complete failure.
Shut the hell up!
All these ramped corridors, one set going down and the other set having us travel up, they're in both games only one required time, because once you get to the sub, that's what you leave with. You never have to walk up the old ramps, and you never have to walk down the new ones. And this feels like a nice little homage reference to the elevator shaped like a donut room where you can't go through the center. And even both games do the quick 90-degree left, 90-degree right zigzag in the path only one time in each area. Both areas get this exact crane moving along a ceiling rail setup that carries canisters, and in both cases the canisters are carrying components designed to increase the destructive potential of a new Shinra weapon. Just look at them, going through the same giant square hole cutout in the wall near the ceiling to transfer rooms. God. Originally, the huge materia component was being used in old technology in order to save many lives. Now, the M units, big bomber shells, and AI programming cores are being used in Airbuster's brand new tech.
I give you Shinra's latest triumph of technology.
In order to execute people.
Your executioner.
And by the way, Heidegger really excited to execute people on live TV to satiate the public so that someone can be to blame for the horrible thing happening? Haven't seen that since Junon, when Avalanche was going to be killed because Meteor was falling, and it would satiate the public. This is all the same old thing, only back then we weren't responsible for the horrifying situation of summoning Meteor, but in the remake, we are eco-terrorists causing destruction around Midgar. The party's vulnerability has been inverted as well. Back then, you were at the end of the rope almost, handcuffed, already apprehended, and imminent moments away from your public demise. In Remake, you spend most of the chapters secretly sabotaging the weapon that's gonna kill you, and then you're even gonna turn the tables and execute the executioner. We'll make a fun day of it.
Big boy's going to an execution, all right. We're gonna put him out of his misery while the whole damn city watches.
And speaking of Airbuster, or as we should call him, Imitation Carry Armor. Carry Armor was the boss of the underwater reactor, so the boss of this fake underwater reactor stand-in has to look and act more like him. The parallels to his disguise lie in his hulking giant hands and the way he's able to fly so much higher. Now Airbuster can use Divide and Conquer, and he becomes a 3-target boss, body and left and right arms. Carry Armor was a boss with 3 targets, a body and its left and right arms. These new separate targets have a new move called Grapple, where they can pick your character up and render them totally ineffective. Carry Armor does the same thing. He can grapple a character and render them completely ineffective until they're freed. But here's the weird reversal. What happens if you don't try to free your grappled characters in Remake? If a character gets grappled in Remake, your inaction will cause them to take damage. Attack the arm to keep your party members safe. This is flipped from the original, where grappled characters would take damage when carry armor was damaged. Lastly, Airbuster's flight power could have just been the one big booster he already has getting stronger. It could have been other ones that come out near his shoulders like a jetpack. But no, it's gotta be things that look like carry armor legs attached at the bottom. Then we've got that 3-person timing minigame in order to leave the reactor.
3, 2, 1. Shake it off. 3, 2, 1.
It's not buttons, it's levers. And because there's 2 sets of levers, and because it unlocks materia reward that's optional, it's just like levers on Corel trains. First set of levers, do the one objective there, then hop on over to the second set of levers. Do them once, train gets faster. Do them again, faster. Do them again, faster. And it's done. Congrats on unlocking an optional magic materia reward, one that you didn't know was going to come out of this. It's the same thing happening at the end of this reactor. We got 1 set of levers, do the objective there, then hop on over to the second set, do them once.
Alpha level security, disengaged.
It gets a little tighter on the timing, do them again.
Beta level security, disengaged.
Tighter timing again.
Gamma level security, disengaged.
And it's done.
Delta level security, disengaged. Disposal room now accessible.
Optional magic materia reward that you didn't know was in there beforehand, unlocked. Hey, that's independent, not magic materia, true, but it's magic-related independent materia. And furthermore, on subsequent playthroughs of this chapter, it is magic materia. But rather than being totally destructive like Ultima, it's the opposite of destruction. Chapter 8, it's mostly Mount Corel and a bit of Gold Saucer. Here, I don't care about the church stuff, it's mostly about how this area, with all its dilapidated railroad tracks, incidents with a bird, and the gatehouse that will open the way for the rest of your party to come through,
Thanks, Cloud.
bears a lot of likeness to the Mount Corel train track section. First, check out ladders and train tracks. While visually similar and functionally distinct, they're both 2 long parallel rails, connected by many shorter rails perpendicular in between. And while one supports massive trains to travel on it, the other is purposed for individual people to use. I'm pointing this out because these inverted yet kind of identical looking things are going to be used to pull off the same moment from the original game. Both scenes give you an audio cue as to the poor condition of the terrain you're on, whether it be ladders or tracks. You hear the creaking tracks in the original. Cloud and Aerith mention the condition of the ladders in Remake.
Looks kinda rusty.
It's pretty old. Be careful.
Both moments progress by the ladders or the tracks breaking.
Shit.
The character on them falls and then catches themselves with one arm. Both scenes even do the hanging the same. They'll sit there forever until you press the input to assist them up. And now there's a new nice visual inversion. Originally, we got to see Cloud's character model hanging by one arm, and now in the remade version of this moment, he's seen standing on firm ground, no problem. Even losing your balance is inverted. Originally, you start going, "Ah, ah," and have a split second to react with the proper input, or else you fall, because this is a serious, real loss of balance. Remake flips this on its head. When Aerith has her little, I'm losing my balance moment.
Skate. You're.
You don't have to react fast at all. You can wait there as long as you want, because this isn't serious, it's a joke.
Gotcha.
You're killing me here.
Now think about this. At some point there was a conversation. What do we do to make Aerith fall into Cloud's arms? Because it would be great to see this cute shot right here. Well, it could be anything that makes her fall, right? A gust of wind, she could just slip from poor footing. We've already established the terrain out here isn't reliable. Why doesn't the thing she's standing on just break? That's happened to people.
Of course.
Hey, I got an idea. How about a bird attacks her out of nowhere in this dive bomb motion? We'll go with that. Why would they choose specifically that? Why does the bird attack her? Are those pigeons sitting back there talking? Cool. Did you know it's Pissed Off Pigeon Day? Cool. Oh.
Kill the humans.
No, it's because when you're trying to be the North Corel train tracks area, there is a moment with birds that you have to account for and reference. Back then, you found this bird nest with little chicks in it. You can try to take the treasure they're sitting on, but when you do, Mama Bird comes out. Then you murder Mama Bird and take the treasure for yourselves. So, in this case of referential revenge, we can have the bird attack the party and come out on top. Even the flow of the areas is the same. For this Sector 5 thing, you got the area with the rickety tracks. You end up passing by a train station, and after that, there's the shantytown. Original's got the same groundwork. There's the rickety tracks area. You even end up passing by a reactor that we know has a train station inside of it, and the shantytown is at the end. Even story moments and quests in this chapter parallel original material. Kids in trouble down by the waterline.
Ah, there they are.
And they're not alone.
Is simply the Priscilla problem. Both of these versions, however, do reward you with a special neck-worn accessory. Shiva is specifically an amulet, as pointed out by Priscilla, and the Oats gives you a handmade necklace that allows you into the hideout. Finding the scattered children is like finding scattered Turtles Paradise newsletters. Why? Because turtles have hard backs, and when you make every kid wear a giant wooden board on their back, they're kinda like a turtle in that respect. What reason was there for them to all have the exact same sword then? And not just that, why is it the only sword that would cover so much surface area on your back? They're supposed to be homemade.
They all wear homemade swords on their backs, so they should be easy to spot.
Yet no kid was creative enough to come up with something different. No one thought the Massamune is cool. They all decide to make it after a sword that a guy who they've never met uses. And if they're really going for the Buster Sword here, they should have made it twice as long, like the actual Buster Sword shown here. But shown here, you can see that it's only meant to cover their back. Stops at the waist because its true purpose is to be a shell metaphor. Weapons on a rampage is a direct reference to something Barrett said back in Junon after the 5 weapons were released from the Northern Crater. Funnily enough, there's 5 weapons on the loose in this remake quest. But the devil's in the inverted details, everyone. Original 5 weapons were massive, functioning as intended, and they were made by the planet. In Remake, these 5 weapons are tiny, defective, and made by Shinra, the opposition to the planet. Now we just walk back here and we'll find ourselves smack dab in the middle of a mini reference fest to the Gold Saucer. First reinforced by the music theme they chose to put here. It's not random. Look at what else is pulled from the saucer. At the start, both locations have something inside of a Mog. One Mog is completely immobile because it's a structure, the other is a costume that moves with the wearer. Both places will sell you a membership. One is a golden ticket and the other is a piece of cardboard. They also both have special currency that can only be spent at these specific locations. But the GP can only be earned at the Gold Saucer, whereas Moogle medals can be earned everywhere in the world. Mog the Moogle is referenced.
You must not be familiar with Mog the Moogle.
In Remake, he's a character in a fairy tale, something intangible. Originally, he was the character in the physical video game Mog House. For attractions, we've got 2 real fighters playing rock, paper, scissors, which is paralleling the 3D virtual fighters doing a rock, paper, scissors mechanic-style battle. We've got a mini runaround chase going on.
You can't catch me! Aw, come and get me! Wait! Stop running away from me!
I hear you, kiddo, because I remember thinking the same thing when I chased Kate Sith around the Gold Saucer. Only then, the stakes were real. Here is just a fun game. Next up, we've got children putting on a make-believe play, and they mention some specific stuff.
I want to be in a play with me. You can be my loyal knight.
A fake play with a loyal knight in it. Well, why not? We've already seen a real play with a lowly knight in it. That kid way up at the top there, he's doing one-handed throws through multiple vertical rings, as opposed to Super Dunk, two-handed throws through a single horizontal ring. Even the Speed Square is paralleled by Whack-A-Box. They're both games about getting as many points as possible in a time limit, but Speed Square's route is fixed, and Whack-A-Box you can approach in whatever way you want. Lastly, both locations even do the moment with someone standing straight up, falling right to the ground. The original had the Shinra guard who fell face down and was found dead when you checked him. The Sephiroth clone in the remake version falls face up and is still alive. Chapter 9 is actually an amusement park that never sleeps, a military march, and the last chapter of this 2-part video. I'm totally convinced that all the new content in Remake is from the old game, mostly post-Midgar, but inverted and repurposed. I haven't found all of it, but it's enough to make your head hurt. Here we go. Red robot arm holding people in its palm. Originally it was controlled by the enemy and was holding despicable villains. Now it's under our control and it's holding a precious main character. But now on to the fun. Welcome to the rest of the Gold Saucer references that Chapter 8's imaginary version of it didn't cover. The entire presentation of Remake's wall market is in direct contrast to its original portrayal. Visually, audibly, it was not inviting, populated, loud, or welcoming.
Welcome to Wall Market, the pleasure capital of Midgar that's got everything for everybody!
But instead of just being a fun, more energetic version of its past self, what makes this wall market call back to Gold Saucer specifically? First of all, the opening shot when you first visit. The camera went underneath the overhead Gold Saucer sign, and now the camera passes up and almost over the south sign. Don't worry, they accounted for the welcome part too. The Gold Saucer had very distinct and separate areas, called squares, and they were labeled with visual signage at all the entrances. The distinct districts of Wall Market are not labeled visually, but rather audibly, by shifting the genre of the ongoing Wall Market theme to fit the area you're in. Big name authority in Gold Saucer, Dio. Big name authority in Wall Market, the Trio. The expensive lifetime gold ticket pass or the standard one-time use pass is paralleled by the hand massage prices. Though there's a third extra option in Remake, I think it's just to prevent modern-day players from having to stop the main story progress and grind for cash, keep it streamlined. Both of these set pieces have you competing to earn a priceless or unaffordable level of reward. either trying to earn your freedom in the original, or trying to get a dress that'll hopefully get you picked to be Corneo's bride, which is effectively a life of imprisonment.
I can guarantee you this. She won't be walking out of that mansion anytime soon.
Even in both games, traveling from where you learn about the competition to the location of the competition itself is done by a long elevator ride, either going all the way up to Gold Saucer, or from the Gold Saucer-esque area all the way down underground. Even both distinctly different games in these different elevators doing different things in the story have you go to a waiting room where you can talk to the competitors and you're waiting to get paged over the intercom to start the match.
Cloud and Aerith, your match will begin shortly. Please make your way to the gate.
But there's an inversion there. The original page was for everyone competing. This one in Remake is specifically for you. Hey look, it's Too Cool for School Joe, top chocobo jockey originally. Now he's this guy right outside the battle doors. There's a callback to the whole pick the normal or the special battle. The whole confirming to go on in the battle square. Couple things here. One, you're the one choosing yes or no. And two, you choose before you get to find out how the rules are going to be changed and altered, usually against you. This is referenced inversely when suddenly the rules change when too many of Beck's badasses show up, and then not you, but Dawn is asked, hey, are we going on? Okay, of course. You won the match. Great. Both battle squares got circular split opening doors in the ground. Either the party's going down into the gateway to heaven in the original, or an enemy is coming out of what is essentially a gateway to hell house. AKA a Ruby Weapon stand-in fight. Look at them. They're both boss fights that take place far beneath the Gold Saucer, on the sand. They are revealed by rising up out of the ground. They're mechanical, they're heavily red-themed on the visuals. They both have a left and right arm target, and when they're free, they can open a portal that sucks up a party member.
So it's my turn?
Bring it! Welcome at first guest. What kind of party is it? I don't know.
Original version took the party member away for the whole fight. Hell House only does it for a moment.
But I'm glad I wasn't invited.
They both even have a god mode that's all about shrugging off damage. We've also got a little callback to the gas chamber in this chapter. Originally, you got brought into a gas chamber under the enemy's custody against your will. The gas activates, but the party foils the plan. And then the party, free of the enemy's custody, gets to leave the chamber. Remake does it all backwards. Party enters the gas chamber not in the enemy's custody, of their own free will. The gas activates and succeeds against the party, and then you leave the chamber while prisoner. Lastly, by taking this new timing minigame and sticking it right before Corneo's audition, and by executing it the way that they did, it's made the whole dress quest feel like the Rufus welcoming ceremony. From the Honeybee Inn to the Don's office now flows exactly like the parade sequence from practice room to presenting in front of Rufus. First, both the minigames are about face button presses with proper timing. Squats is like that too, but that one gives you the whole pattern beforehand and it's just repeated. The march and the dancing only show you what the next prompt to be completed is. Both sequences have a little practice room you can use before the main event in order to get your moves down. In the original, you're forced into doing it, but in the remake, you can skip the practice session. Both sequences have the character performing choreography for a live, cheering, whistling audience. Speaking of whistling, that little high-pitched every time you get a prompt right in the remake dance is just a parallel to the whistles that were blown every time you were given a prompt in the Shinra parade. And they even managed to flip that. Originally, the whistle happens when the command is shown or given, and Remake plays the sound when the command is followed or completed. And to any skeptics still out there, when Square rearranges the interior Honeybee Inn theme, the venue where this whole alleged march parallel takes place, into a new musical genre, of all choices, why did they pick March? This ain't a coincidence. Even the element of being in disguise while you're performing is in both games, but inverted. Cloud himself puts the uniform on in private. The audience he performs for does not know his identity. Remake shows Cloud getting dressed up by others, and even though it's in a little private setup, it's on stage in front of the audience he's performing for. They're not being fooled. Not by this disguise, and thanks to you watching the first half of my theory, and the second half when it comes out soon, please and thank you, you will no longer be fooled by this disguise. You are starting to see how all of this remake is all of the original. Before I go, let's look at the world map locations and see what remains to be referenced. That's not a lot, and we'll cover the big stuff next time. For now, this concludes part 1 of 2. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch and enjoy. I'll see you for the finale.